If you asked me to show you the most typically Irish thing in Ireland today, I would bring you to this building in the northwest of Dublin. It's an old building which is being restored. Now, you might think there's nothing specially Irish about that. After all, in every country, people with a sense of history or an eye for architectural beauty strive to preserve old buildings for the delight of generations to come. But this building, which Irishmen are restoring with loving care, is none of these. This is a prison, the notorious Kilmainham Gaol. It was built about 160 years ago on the old Gallows Hill, but it has been lying unused and left to rot for 30 years now. That's why the work of restoration, which was started in 1960, will need at least 3 more years. 3 more years of hard work for the 200 unpaid volunteers who come here in the evenings and on Saturdays, some of them night after night, to use tools lent by Irish firms and materials bought with money subscribed by the public. Seamus Brennan, 46 years ago, on the 4th of May 1916, you lay in this cell awaiting execution. I've got here a copy of a letter you wrote that day. "Dearest wife," you wrote, "we are going to be tried today. I am afraid it is all up with me. Oh, Vera, won't you pray for me? I love you. I'm breaking my heart. I hope poor Tom is alive. I heard he was shot. I know it will be hard on you, but bear it bravely for the love of God. I can't write any more." Mr. Brennan, what do you remember most vividly of your terrible hours in this cell?
Well, what struck me most while I was here in Kilmainham was to hear the shooting of our leaders in the yard outside. I remember distinctly hearing the volleys in the morning time.
You knew what it was, did you?
Well, I had a suspicion of what was happening. I didn't actually know. It was only afterwards I heard who were executed.
Now, I would have thought that this place and that cell hold nothing but the most terrible memories for you, and yet here you are today, Secretary of the Preservation Society. Why do you want it restored and preserved?
Well, we regard this jail as being a very historic place connected with all the leaders of the different periods of the insurrection movement for independence in this country.
It's a bit of Irish history in stone, in other words.
Exactly.
It's the history that lies nearest to Irish hearts, the history of revolution. This building tells the story of the last century and a half of a people's long fight for freedom. From 1796 onwards, members of every Irish resistance movement were brought here to endure imprisonment or await execution, like the 14 men who led young Seamus Brennan and 1,000 others in the famous Easter Rising of 1916. That rising was planned, but typically bungled, as a golden chance to end the rule of a Britain locked in war with Germany. These were the 1916 cells. A few hours before he faced the firing squad, the poet in this end cell, Joseph Plunkett, was married here in the prison chapel to Grace Gifford, herself a few years later a political prisoner in Kilmainham. Was William Pearse, crouched behind this door, allowed a last look at his schoolmaster brother Padraig as he walked to death? Long before the Easter Rising, Irish patriots rotted or died in this jail. As they passed beneath the Kilmainham devils, the serpents of crime restrained by law and justice, they would be more aware of the holes in the wall above, now filled in. In those days of public hangings, the gibbet was fitted there. One of the very last Kilmainham prisoners was Eamon de Valera, the Irish president, now so nearly blind that when he visited the jail recently, he had to pace out the corridor to identify this as his cell. These are just some of the patriots who suffered within these dark walls. The executed among them are Irish immortals, all, but most revered and mourned are the Easter Rising leaders who 46 years ago, in batches over 10 agonizing days, walked out of this prison darkness to the morning sunshine and the firing squad. It was the last execution especially which sickened not Ireland alone, but even a war-racked Britain, quite aware that some of these men had been negotiating with the German enemy. James Connolly, wounded in the foot and dying of gangrene in the Castle Hospital, was carried through that door in a stretcher and shot there propped against the wall. You don't have to be an Irishman to bear the head in this silent yard. What makes a young chap like you so interested in this scheme that you'll devote spare time to it?
Well, I think the young people of Ireland today, I don't think they have sufficient interest in their past. We're here, we're content with the country as it is, but I don't think we appreciate what the older generation have suffered for us, and particularly what Irish patriots from the rising of 1798 right down practically to certainly to our father's time have suffered in this place for us. I think the younger generation, by coming here, they can see what the older generation suffered, and then they'll appreciate it and appreciate their country more. Today we're an independent country. We have to remember that once upon a time we were subject to a foreign country, and therefore we should appreciate what they have done.
Couldn't you honour the memory of these men in a more dynamic way?
What better way could you think of?
Well, I can think of all kinds of things, for example, that might be built on this site, things that would march into the future, things that would help the Irish people and perpetuate the memory of these men in a living way.
Phrases like marching into the future don't mean a thing. There's only one way of remembering the past, and that is deliberately remembering it by a monument. Something which is put up as a library or a playing field or a football field on the pretense that it is going to memorialize the past never really works.
Yeah, if I had my way, of course, every disused prison would be promptly blown up.
Yes, but it's a museum piece. And it's an important one from the Irish historical point of view.
Mind you, I don't know of any other country where this would happen but Ireland. The French, you see, didn't like the Bastille
Now, don't
much.
tell me about the Bastille. Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard about that.
Well, now, don't you think it was a good idea?
I do not. I think they've regretted doing it long ago. Did you knock down the Tower of London?
Well, we haven't had a chance, you see. You're talking
Are you
to
speaking as a
Scot,
Scotchman? That's true. Well, the English haven't knocked down the Tower of London yet. It's a prison.
President de Valera, moving from a rebel cell to high office, trod a path which was to be followed later in chastened but happier imperial times by India's Nehru and Ghana's Nkrumah. So it isn't quite true that men seldom learn from the past and governments never, that no force can overthrow an idea, and that in the long run government can only be by consent. That's the real lesson of Kilmainham Gaol, and maybe it is a lesson that's worth preserving. Good night.